is going on, all you wonderful A-plusers out there? It is I, Stuart, here once again with another video. This time, going to be talking about the upcoming Power Rangers special, Once and Always. Yes, I know that we are so close to this special finally coming out, and I'm sure a lot of fans out there probably, didn't really keep up with the show after the events of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and also probably haven't seen the show in so long that I wouldn't doubt if they just don't really know what to expect from the special, and maybe that could be intimidating when going into it. Like, oh man, I may not remember half the stuff that they're going to be referencing when going into this. So I wanted to compile a list of episodes that I recommend watching before checking out the special if you want to basically catch up on all the context that might be brought up in the special itself. Now, obviously the special hasn't come out, so I don't know for sure what episodes are going to be referenced or not when it does come out, but looking at the trailer, kind of depicting it, all the Easter eggs that we see, I've compiled the list of episodes that I think are going to be mentioned, and I'm going to talk about why I think there's a good chance that these episodes are going to be referenced in one way or another, and it's just going to be kind of a fun way to catch up with overall, like, where the team started and where they are now, basically. So I'm going to be covering not just Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but a few episodes that take place over many seasons after Mighty Morphin Power Rangers that I think could possibly play some role within the special. I'm going to be going in chronological order so that way it doesn't get too confusing, and it'll be kind of easier for you guys to know where to start and where to end when catching up with Power Rangers. Now, I am kind of cheating with the first entry on this list, but my first recommendation is Go-Go Power Rangers issue 17 and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 104. Since Rita Repulsa is returning in the special as the main villain, it would probably be smart to start with her backstory. Now, there is a lot of debate amongst Power Ranger fans as to the continuity of the Power Ranger comic books. For some, they say that the comic books are completely non-canon, so they're not even worth talking about, whereas others say that they are 100% canon within the show. For me, I'm a little bit in the middle. While I do say that the comic books take place in another universe, I would also say that the multiverse is no stranger when it comes to Power Rangers. For the most part, the comic books do follow the events of the show to a T, while telling stories that take place between events of the show. And with how well the comic books tell these stories and how well these stories line up with the stories of the TV show, it's kind of easy to see the stories of the comic books taking place in the world of the TV show, just see them as events that we don't actually get to see, very much like the events of the show are events we don't get to see in the comic books. The only thing really keeping these two IPs separate are the timelines, because of course the original show takes place in the 90s, whereas the comic books take place in modern time. Besides that, it's really kind of easy to see these taking place in separate universes but having very similar events. So for me, I see Rita's backstory in this comic book as being canon. So even though we met Rita's father, Master Vile, in the series, her mother has always been a mystery. The comic book not only reveals the identity of Rita's mother, but also her mother's relationship with Zordon, the wizard who would eventually trap Rita Repulsa in a space dumpster for 10,000 years. Now, it's unlikely this backstory will ever get brought up within the special, but it's a good read regardless. The next entry on my list is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Episode 1, Day of the Dumpster. Of course, I was going to mention the first episode. How could I not? This episode introduces the original team of teenagers with attitude, brings us one of the show's most iconic villains ever, Rita Repulsa, and has the most badass theme song of all time. Most of all, the pilot helps establish the Monster of the Week formula that the show would continue to use for 29 seasons. Because of how iconic many moments in this episode are, it's likely we'll get a couple of references to this episode in the anniversary special when it premieres. The next entry on my list is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Episode 2, High Five. Since the anniversary special seems to revolve around the death of Trini, I feel like it's important to bring up the first Trini-focused episode, which just happens to be the second episode of the series. High Five introduces us to one of Trini's main skills, which is her ability to translate Billy's technobabble, and gives us one of the funniest fight scenes in the series.
Ready! Locked on! Go! Let's do it!
Another thing to note is that in this episode, Trini is established to have a fear of heights that she must overcome in order to save Billy.
Billy, you're too high!
She eventually does overcome this fear, but ironically, this bravery could possibly be what leads to her heroic death in the anniversary, given this shot that we get from the trailer. Now, before I get into my fourth recommendation, I do want to give an honorable mention to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 2, Episodes 22 and 23, The Ninja Encounter, because this is where we get the introduction of Adam, Aisha, and Rocky, three characters who would later take up the mantle as the Black, Yellow, and Red Ranger. The next entry on my list is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 2, Episode 27 and 28, The Power Transfer. While being a Power Ranger may seem really awesome in the perspective of a child who has yet to grasp the concept of a living wage, when you're a full-grown adult, you learn that you actually need money to survive. This is why after 87 episodes, it was time for actors Austin St. John, Walter Jones, and Thuy Trang to finally start looking for employment elsewhere, as according to them, they were getting paid about as much as a McDonald's employee. This led to Jason, Zach, and Trini leaving Angel Grove to join a peace conference in Switzerland or become the Omega Rangers if you follow the comic books, and thus transferring the responsibilities of the Red, Black, and Yellow Ranger to Rocky, Adam, and Aisha. Since the special will feature Rocky as the Red Ranger instead of Jason, and Adam and Aisha in supporting roles, learning about their origins as Power Rangers might be important context for their role in Once and Always. Before I get to the next entry on my list, I have to give another honorable mention, this time to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 3 Episodes 18 and 19, A Ranger Catastrophe, because this is our introduction to Kat, who would eventually take up the mantle as the Pink Ranger. The fifth entry on my list is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 3 Episodes 23, 24, and 25, A Different Shade of Pink. Much like the previous actors who left before, after 134 episodes and a movie, it was finally time for Amy Jo Johnson to move on to better things. Unlike Austin, Walter, and Thuy, however, Amy Jo Johnson had given the writers enough time to prep for her departure, and thus we were given a full saga in which Kimberly is given the opportunity to compete in the Pan Global Games, basically the Power Ranger version of the Olympics. And thus it was time for Kim to transfer her powers to Kat Hillard. Much like everyone's favorite Power Ranger Tommy Oliver, Kat had previously been introduced to the series as a villain, and also like Tommy, it was clear that Kat was being controlled by Rita the whole time. However, after causing Kimberly to suffer an injury not too different from the one that she suffered when she was competing in the Olympics as a diver, Kat is able to free herself from Rita's control and prove herself worthy of taking the mantle as the Pink Power Ranger. This is, of course, the mantle we will see her continue to carry in the Once and Always special. Before I get to my sixth recommendation, I'm going to give another honorable mention, but this time not to any particular episode, but rather the season Power Ranger Zeo, the first season that really changed up the status quo of the show by giving the Rangers a new suit and an overall new premise and new enemies, basically. This is what would eventually start the tradition of every season being a whole new team, a whole new set of costumes, although in the first 5 seasons the team itself wouldn't really change, it would just be the costume that would change, but it would still be the same people from the previous season, and usually the change would kind of come like in between the season, like in somewhere in the middle. It was really bizarre. The Power Rangers was still trying to find a way to keep going, but also keep the fans that it had, from the beginning. So I wanted to bring up Zeo because this was the introduction of the Machine Empire, and while it hasn't been confirmed, I do think it's a huge possibility that the Machine Empire may have something to do with Rita Repulsa's return. Now, the sixth entry on this list is Power Rangers in Space Episodes 42 and 43, Countdown to Destruction. I fucking love this two-parter. This isn't just a finale for Power Rangers in Space, but all the seasons that came before. It's strange how the Rangers of previous seasons have never actually defeated any of their main foes. I mean, even in Zeo, the Machine Empire wasn't exactly defeated by the Rangers, but instead they were betrayed by Rita and Zed. But Countdown to Destruction makes up for this, as it leads to the defeat of not only the Space Rangers' main villain Dark Spectre, but all the villains that came before. Just as all hope seems lost, Andros is forced to make the ultimate sacrifice and destroy the energy tube that holds Zordon's very essence, which causes an energy wave that wipes out all evil forces working under Dark Spectre. Kind of. While this energy wave does destroy all evil, it doesn't completely destroy someone who is evil but still has good inside of them. In the case of Rita and Zed, It's my assumption that this moment might be recontextualized so that Rita'S evil qualities weren't actually destroyed, but instead forced out of her body as an evil spirit with no body, and then years later she finds a robot body, and that's how we get Robo Rita. It's hard to say because, again, we don't know exactly how Rita comes back, but it is important to note that Rita was technically never destroyed, she was just turned to good. The final main entry on my list is Power Rangers Wild Force episode 34, Forever Red. Forever Red was the 10th anniversary of Power Rangers and featured what was debatably the most badass team up ever. Every Red Ranger from the past 10 seasons, with the exception of Rocky, must team up to defeat the remnants of the Machine Empire. The two aspects of this episode that might be important context for Once and Always is that we learned that most Ranger teams do tend to communicate with each other after the events of their season, so if there's ever a big threat that one team just isn't enough for, they know to team up and, basically work together to stop any threats that could be too big for more than one team. It's also where we learn that the Machine Empire is still technically out there, and quite possibly responsible for Rita'S new design. Now, that's all the main entries on my list, so now I'm just going to blast through a bunch of honorable mentions that I also think will be good if you're interested in knowing just a tiny bit more context to what we can expect within this anniversary special. So the first is an honorable mention for Power Rangers SPD as a season. Now, we see Adam and Aisha in the trailer wearing a uniform that reads SPA, which looks very similar to the logo of Power Rangers SPD. Power Rangers SPD is a season that takes place in the future of 2025, which actually is not really that far in the future anymore, as it's just a couple years from now. And we could easily see SPA as probably being a predecessor to Power Rangers SPD, though it's not confirmed or denied one way or another. Now, what does SPD stand for? Space Patrol Delta, which means that SPA could very possibly stand for Space Patrol Alpha, maybe? As in Alpha 5? Maybe? I don't know. The next honorable mention goes to Power Rangers Mystic Force, episodes 31 and 32, Mystic Fate. This is where we learn what happens to Rita after the evil leaves her body. She apparently becomes the Mystic Mother, which is like the keeper of all good magic in the universe or something like that. It was kind of confusing the way they described it, and it was very much like in like 2 or 3 sentences, but regardless, if you are curious what happens to Rita after the events of Countdown to Destruction, this is where you can go. The next honorable mention goes to Power Rangers Operation Overdrive, episodes 20 and 21, Once a Ranger, which is also the 15th anniversary special of the series. The interesting thing to note about this is that here we learned that Rita and Zed had a kid, which is kind of confusing because the two of them weren't really an item until the events of Power Rangers season 2 or 3, one of those two, don't remember, but regardless, I don't know how they had a kid that suddenly became a full-grown adult and became this well-known threat throughout the galaxy. I mean, it is Power Rangers, so it's very possible that time travel was involved, but the backstory of their kid is not really explained very well, but it is possible that he will get name dropped in the Once and Always special, so you never know. I figure it's worth bringing up regardless. The next honorable mention goes to Power Rangers Super Megaforce, the legendary battle, which is the 20th anniversary team up. And nothing story-wise happens that I think will really play a part in Once and Always, but it is important to kind of note that this is evidence that Rangers continued to basically communicate with each other season after season, even with teams that take place in other universes, as we do see the RPM Rangers in this battle, despite the fact that they don't even take place within the main Power Rangers universe. The next honorable mention is Power Rangers Ninja Steel episode 10, Dimensions in Danger, which is the 25th anniversary special of the series. One thing to kind of note about this is that there's an implication that Kat and Tommy Oliver are actually husband and wife and that they have a kid together. This, of course, does get confirmed in the tie-in comic book, which is actually canon to the show and not canon to the other Boom Studios comic books. I highly recommend getting me this one to read, but basically it does confirm that after Kimberly left to join basically the Pan Global Games, Tommy and Kat began a relationship, and they had a kid together apparently, so apparently things went really well for them. I mean, how often do you know someone who actually marries someone that they dated in high school? It doesn't happen too often. So, good for them. I hope they're having a good life together. I am curious how this is going to play out in the special, as we do know for a fact that Jason David Frank isn't coming back to reprise his role as Tommy Oliver, unfortunately, even though this did start filming before his unfortunate passing recently. But it is very possible that it'll very least get mentioned at some point during the special, and we may even get a glimpse at their kid, since we know that Trini's kid is going to be playing a part in the special as well. The last honorable mention I have to give is to Power Rangers Beast Morphers Season 2, Episode 13, Grid Connection. This is where we find out that the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers are all still working together. Those of you who do not know, this was not an anniversary team up, but it was a team up between all the Dino Rangers, because Goldar returns and the Rangers have to work together in order to basically defeat this new Goldar, who's now more powerful than the Goldar that came before. And they also have to help the Beast Morpher Rangers with defeating their main villain of the season. A pretty fun episode overall, plus we get to see Jason come back for the final time. It's unfortunate that we won't be seeing Jason, however, in Once and Always. But if you do want to see one last glimpse of Jason before moving on to the special, this is where I'd recommend checking him out. So those are my recommendations if you want to catch up with everything that might be important for the context of Power Rangers Once and Always. But again, the special hasn't come out yet, so who knows? Maybe none of the episodes that I mentioned will even be mentioned in the special. It's hard to say, but this is just based on everything that we've seen in the trailer, what I think is going to play out in the special. But if you guys have any other recommendations for episodes to watch before watching Once and Always, definitely let me know in the comments below if I missed anything. And also, if you want me to do more videos like this in the future, definitely let me know as well in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, but of course guys, above all, don't forget to keep it A+, and I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.